And
Mark
you're sitting here.
If you hang on, let's listen in on Gavin Newsom, then I'll give you a chance to respond first. I don't think we have any volume. All right. I guess we have no. Is that on their end or is it on our end? I'm asking. That's on their end. Apparently a live feed. He's having a little bit of difficulty, Mark Waymon. If you have time for podcasts and MSDNC and to fight me on X and you on X, I think you're kind of missing the point. Or if you put handcuffs on police.
He absolutely is, Sean, but this is part of the best thing that could happen to him. He's having audio difficulties, but it shows how bad the state's being ran, too, right? The guy absolutely should be thanking President Trump right now for trying to restore an order, because the only thing Governor Newsom is good at right now is sucking at being number one, at being terrible governor.
So Gavin Newsom just continues to humiliate himself in every single way possible. Of course, everyone knows at the current moment that subtly he is trying to use this situation to leverage and launch his 2028 presidential campaign. Current polls are now showing him as the ideal 2028 frontrunner by a narrow margin. And of course, he's even going so far as to make the pivot to the sensible, moderate, middle-of-the-road Democrat, where he starts a podcast where he's willing to talk to MAGA figures, right? Speak to the other side. He condemns violence. He really is just a reasonable guy, guys, after all. After, of course, years of governing as one of the most far-left governors in all of American history, number one. But of course, number two, I also have to point out, guys, I'm not exactly sure that the images, the optics of people in his supposedly, again, middle-of-the-road, center-left reasonable state, burning down cars, waving Mexican flags, assaulting police officers, rioting and looting. Not really sure that that'll go over too well with, let's say, middle America, right? The swing state voters in places like Michigan and Pennsylvania. I think, frankly, this is going down much like the California wildfire situation where, of course, despite what he is trying to do, right, gain a bunch of attention here, in the end, the entire thing might go so far as to backfire, but Gavin doesn't seem to think so. Current polls do, of course, show Gavin actually leading as the 2028 frontrunner. And so we'll kind of see where this whole thing goes, right? Will Gavin be politically successful, at least in the Democrat primary? Forget the general election right now, the Democrat primary, to leverage this situation. Well, of course, last night, guys, he did his big, pseudo-presidential address, as you can see, right tonight. Governor Gavin Newsom's address, Democracy at a Crossroads. This is where he's going to make that dramatic speech from his office where he addresses the American people, right? This is his big moment. This is where he wants to be seen by everyone. Needless to say, guys, it went horribly wrong in ways you probably could not even expect, right? Not even just that the speech was stupid or the argument was stupid, but he could not even get it to work, right? He called all this attention to himself, and then literally the stream has no audio. Like I said, he is finding new ways to humiliate himself. But I want to tell you about this little address to the nation that went horribly south here today and displayed, even from an optical sense. I understand things happen, okay? But much like when Ron DeSantis launched his presidential campaign off of a Twitter space where the audio and the stream was not working, this I'd argue perhaps is even worse than that. So we'll get into that. We also got to give you some updates on Gavin in general and, of course, what other Democrat politicians are getting up to, because I will once again here, guys, reiterate, Democrats, politically speaking, are doing themselves absolutely no favors at the current moment by, number one, even the core issue of opposing Donald Trump on deportations. Poll after poll is showing this is an issue, first of all, the American people take seriously, number one, and number two, overwhelmingly, by margins of 5, 10 to 15 to 20 points even, support what Trump is doing. And we also see similar levels of support, as we showed yesterday, of Trump even deploying the National Guard. So again, as Democrats try to do this reinvention of themselves, right, the introspection of, we lost 2024, how do we do it? How can we figure out how to change? They're learning none of the lessons. These people are so stubborn. So we'll get into it. And we also got to talk about Maxine Waters, because of course we do. So with that said, guys, do us a favor. If you enjoy the content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Subscribing is the best way to support these videos and ensure that you never miss any of these updates. And with that said, so here you go, right? Gavin Newsom put out yesterday, quote, "What we're seeing in Los Angeles goes far beyond Trump's call for deporting criminals." By the way, he did deport criminals. "It's a step towards authoritarianism. Guys, it's our democracy at a crossroads. Watch live at 6:30 p.m. Right, Gavin Newsom's big address to the nation. This is his moment. What if I told you guys that as soon as this stream goes live, literally, as you can see here, the audio did not work. Okay, let's play some of that. So true, Gavin Newsom. Totally agree. 100%. We cut it off, guys. We cut it off. Apparently, it looks like it's pre-recorded, by the way, but let's stop it now. This really did happen, ladies and gentlemen. And if you don't believe me, okay, if you think, oh, I'm just muting it or something, no, take a listen here as the news media themselves have to sit back and watch as, again, Gavin Newsom literally has no audio.
Okay, we are working on the audio. Not sure if that's on the governor's end, but we're working to get that production up and running for you so you can listen in. We certainly will have excerpts of what the governor has said, but we're efforting to get the audio working so we can hear Governor Newsom's speech. We do know that he did file a law.
Okay, apparently the source that they're putting out of this has no audio. We're going to try to get that audio working in a moment.
So look, technical problems happen. And, as someone who does tech stuff, obviously, YouTube, all that, I understand, okay, sometimes things go wrong, all right? So, I don't want anyone next time I have a technical issue be like, haha, look at you said Gavin Newsom doesn't know how to work the audio. Okay, but the point overall is this. Even if it's a genuine mistake, although I have to say, I don't know how you don't check beforehand. Hey, sound check before we do our big address to the nation. This is a big deal. This is something you guys hyped up. You want the whole country to see this. You don't want to come off as a laughingstock, even if that means delay the address or something, number one here. But also, furthermore, it doesn't matter, guys. This is politics. This is kind of a dirty business sometimes. And guess what? Yeah, when you come off with that bad of optics, when you turn your big moment, your big speech into a laughingstock, what do you expect people to say? Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the situation gets funnier here because even guys, as Gavin Newsom managed to get his audio working, it still wasn't really working because you had sound interference and echo and all these things. I mean, take a listen here to Sean Hannity's show last night as they desperately tried to play Gavin Newsom's speech. But finally, as they finally got the audio working here, after 2 entire minutes of silence, embarrassing, by the way. How do you let that happen? Gavin Newsom's audio here, guys, continues to melt down for the 3rd time in one single night, okay? The image, right, is that Donald Trump is unhinged, he's incompetent, all these things. And then meanwhile, this was Gavin Newsom's big response to it all.
Not all of us is about this. California may be first. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other democracy are next. Is democracy. Democracy is under assault. Democracy is before our eyes. This moment, our eyes. This moment has arrived.
All right, we have apparently more audio problems and more of the feed problems with Gavin Newsom. Markway Mullen, while
so true, Gavin. I 100% agree. Truly strong message he has here. I'm really compelled. As a center of the road independent voter, I wasn't sure how to feel about Donald Trump's deployment of the National Guard. But after hearing Gavin Newsom say, I really felt compelled. I really was like, that's the message. This is how Democrats win, right, guys? This is how the Democrat Party takes back power in 2026. Unbelievable, guys, and just utterly hilarious. But finally, right, even as Gavin Newsom manages to get the audio working and the feed going live, by the way, I'd also like to point out here, as if the totally transparent issues here could not get any worse. You'll also notice here they changed the color grading. So what we mean by that is so you have the filter on here, right? So the left is what the camera actually looks like. And this is the original video where there's no audio. The right is them putting on the saturation filter and all that. And look, okay, fine. You put filters, you make the lighting, the colors look better, fine. But the image, right, of you switching one to the other to literally show to the entire world that what you're seeing here is completely fake. It's astroturfed, much like everything else Gavin Newsom doing. Yeah, not much of a good look. Like, you might as well keep that. But yeah, again, total embarrassment here. Probably one of the worst things we have ever seen. But finally, guys, as Gavin Newsom manages to get the colors working and the sound working and all that, the messaging is not much better here, considering Gavin Newsom, for a lot of the speech, literally just sounds like he's on the verge of tears as he melts down about Donald Trump. And I'm not sure. Apparently, they were going to make the case this is what strength and true Democrat leadership looks like. Doesn't look like much of a leader. But here's Gavin Newsom, getting teared up, crying on camera over Donald Trump being so mean to everybody.
We all need to stand up and be held to account, a higher level of accountability. If you exercise your First Amendment rights, please do it peacefully. I know many of you are feeling deep anxiety, stress, and fear, but I want you to know that you are the antidote to that fear and that anxiety. What Donald Trump wants most is your fealty, your silence to be complicit in this moment. Do not give in to him.
Wow. Riveting stuff, guys. Just truly so inspirational. What can we say? Now, with that said, Gavin Newsom continues to be widely mocked and ridiculed by the internet. And I do have to point out, this is going to be a serious problem for Gavin going into 2028. Because, yes, don't get me wrong, right? Despite us making fun of his audio problems and all that, he is a talented politician in the sense that he's slick, he's a total sociopath, and to some degree, yeah, you could see the angle where if the Republican doesn't message against him effectively, people kind of fall for this guy's tricks. But the issue is, of course, in the era of social media, and especially ever since Elon bought Twitter and all that and basically changed the landscape, actually free and open social media without at least the mass censorship that we had before, it is very easy, guys, for people to bring up the very obvious and undeniable receipts of Gavin Newsom flip-flopping 100%, right? So whether that's on like crime or this or that, or, you know, the wildfires, like every single issue, as we know, Gavin Newsom has just done a total 180 on. He's a total chameleon, as you can see. And people are pointing out, for instance, even in the sense of the National Guard back in 2021, because, right, remember, keep in mind here, what Gavin Newsom is now saying, guys, is the decision to deploy the Guard when there's actual rioting and violence going on is unprecedented. It's a threat to democracy. It's authoritarianism. It's crazy, all this stuff. People are, of course, pointing out that back in 2021, after January 6th, Gavin Newsom had no problem. In fact, he actively deployed here, guys, 1,000 National Guard members. Not a couple hundred, 1,000 National Guard to the California state capitol, just in case, guys, a preemptive measure. If there was an insurrection in Sacramento, you can't make that up. Take a listen here for yourself, and you'll rapidly see, not just on this issue, but broadly speaking, yes, Gavin Newsom is going to have a serious problem with this type of stuff going forward.
We're taking important steps here in California in light of what we saw at our nation's capital just last week. Let me be clear. There will be no tolerance for violence. That's why today, along with the CHP and Office of Emergency Services, I've activated the California National Guard to support the CHP to enhance security with an initial deployment of up to 1,000 Guard members to protect critical state infrastructure in and around the state capitol. Donald Trump, without consulting California law enforcement leaders, commandeered 2,000 of our state's National Guard members to deploy on our streets. He chose theatrics over public safety. That's when the downward spiral began.
He chose theatrics over public safety. Okay, so let's get this straight, right? After January 6th, Gavin Newsom, in response to a ghost of a problem, right? A hypothetical that maybe it could happen, preemptively deploys, guys, 1,000 National Guard to protect the California state capitol. And again, thank you to the internet for being able to find things like this so easily and expose him just right on camera for everyone, right? Because, this is in response to something that did not happen and never did happen, right? It was just a possibility. Hey, maybe there might be a repeat January 6th at our state capitol. Does that preemptively. But apparently, here in 2025, when you have actual riots already happening by the time Trump deployed the Guard, right? Actual violence breaking out. That's authoritarianism. That's overreach. That's political theatrics. That's escalating the situation. But again, National Guard being deployed to a problem that did not exist and never happened, but hey, maybe it's a preemptive measure. That was the worst. That was a good idea, according to Gavin Newsom. So it goes on, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, in general, on the broader theme of is Gavin Newsom's little political stunt working? Well, that might, of course, be true in the Democrat primary field. I don't deny that. I think at the moment, after all of this, he's probably emerging. Currently, things will change, but currently, yes, as the 2028 frontrunner, he definitely has momentum in his own party. But broadly speaking, across America, as you can see, CBS YouGov, of all entities, guys, usually not the most favorable poll to Trump, came out today and put out here, actually June 9th, correction there. So that was on Monday. Yes, on Monday, a favorability poll of Donald Trump versus Gavin Newsom. This is after the National Guard gets deployed to Los Angeles. As you can see here, Donald Trump currently enjoying a 9-point lead over the Democrat hero, Gavin Newsom. Trump here at 43%, Gavin Newsom at 34%. Although I have to say, to a degree, maybe Newsom deserves some credit because he is about 7 points more popular than the average Democrat party. So, I guess that's something. But, being in the 30s, 9-point deficit over Trump when, of course, the election was basically like 51-49. Not the best situation for Gavin Newsom, although even despite all of the Democrat fear-mongering, right, as I so often point out, like they think they're winning, they think they're taking one step forward, but in reality, they're actually taking 2 steps back. Prime example of that right here, guys, because when you look, for instance, to the 2026 midterms, this is something Democrats are expecting to go in with a lot of momentum, right? They're really going to make a statement. Obviously, right? How could people support what's currently going on? The political support, as we hear every single day, is collapsing. People are regretting their vote for Donald Trump. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Signal poll, as you can see here, Signal Polling and Analytics, which is an A-rated pollster from the 2024 election, just came out today with this generic ballot poll for how the midterms will go. And as you can see, it is basically at a tie, right? Generic ballot here. Democrats enjoy a lead of just 0.6 over the Republicans. As you can see, 47.2% to Republicans, 46.9%. Guys, let me just say that is basically nothing. That is a terrible poll for Democrats. Why do I say that? Even if a narrow, right, less than 1 point lead, is that Democrats probably are hoping to even to guarantee take back the House by a convincing or even like decisive margin, will of course likely there, right, want or need to have a several point advantage in the generic ballot. But especially when you look at the Senate map, by the way, the Senate, they're going to need probably at least a 5, if not like a 10-point generic ballot advantage in this case. They're probably hoping for at the current moment, right? They want to be, especially on a midterm year, you want to be in a position where if you're supposedly the effective opposition, at least D+5, if not like D+7, 8, or 9. Again, basically they're tied. What would this translate to in the general election? Well, the House would basically be a mere toss-up. You might even say from this poll that Republicans would be favored to win the House by a narrow margin, if not more, right? Because keep in mind, popular vote nationally compared to how the seats and stuff actually break down. But yeah, again, this is catastrophic for Democrats going into the midterms thinking, oh, we have the momentum. People are really going to come to our side. Absolutely not the case. And as a matter of fact, you look back to April, for instance, these polls looked a lot better for Democrats, right? Now they're basically narrowing. The Democrats are sinking politically. And why is that? As I said, over the past month, I think 2 things are happening. First of all, the economy starting to move in a better direction, right? You're seeing inflation reports come out that are positive. Trade deals are moving along, etc. The people, maybe their anxiety, their fears they had on Liberation Day are starting to ease and say, oh, everything is fine, right? The world is not ending, whatever. But also, secondly, gonna point this out time and time again. As I said, the moment that the Kilmar-Abrego-Garcia stuff went down, the decision by Democrats to make immigration and deportations their big shining star issue is a serious political mistake. Because as I say time and time again, the American people overwhelmingly are with Donald Trump on the deportation stuff. And we showed that in approval rating polls for him, but also even the midterms. This is proof what the Democrats are focusing on simply is not working. You take a look at this as well, right? This, by the way, historically continues to be like the big indicator of an election. Right direction versus wrong direction, right? Do you think the U.S. is on the right track as a country or the wrong track as a country? As you can see from this poll, right now, currently, the right direction is at 46%. 46% say we're on the right track. 50% say we're on the wrong track. So that is 4-point advantage for the wrong track. You might look at that and say, well, that doesn't sound necessarily the best, right? Except look at the context, the historical track record of this poll, which began back in September 2022. Look at that, right? Back in September of 2022. Actually, as a matter of fact, right before the midterms where the Republicans underperformed, as you may remember, 59.8% of Americans said America is on the wrong track. Only 36.5% said it's on the right track. Now look at where that's narrowed today. Again, only just a 4-point difference, guys. This is the best response, best result for the right track answer since we started polling this poll in particular, right? Signal Insights, as you can see, right? The election happens December 2024. You get this shoot up and look at that. So it dips a little bit in April. You could say like April was the month where people got anxiety, they got fears, whatever. Okay, fair enough. Look at where it is now though, right? Trending once again in May and June upwards to now the highest that answer has been for country going in the right track. Bad news for Democrats, not just for Newsom, but in general. Again, as I'll reiterate, Democrats, what you are doing simply is not working. Now, with that said, I got to say once again, even to this day, despite seeing these numbers or maybe not whatever, the Democrat Party continues to do itself no favors because not only do you have Gavin Newsom saying, riveting statements like, But on top of that, right, other prominent Democrats like Maxine Waters are just going out here and just outright denying, as you see the images right here on your screen, that there is apparent, like still to this day are saying there was no violence, there are peaceful protests happening when the entire country can see, yes, that is obviously not the case. Take a listen to this recent meltdown Maxine Waters had in front of the U.S. House of Representatives.
And even those who were out of step with what we are advocating, peaceful protest, did not create any violence. Nobody was shot. Nobody was killed. Get it in your head. And so when martial law is called, what are you going to say? I missed the point. Don't miss the point, you all. Don't think that somehow, because they called out the National Guard, there was violence. There was no violence. I was on the street. I know. And I went from downtown detention back out into the community, talking to people what happened in Paramount, what happened in Compton, what happened in Inglewood. So, first of all, get it straight. And don't just rely on what you're being told or the few incidents that you saw.
There has not been any violence because according to Maxine Waters, the only form of violence are the two things she mentioned, right? There definitely can't be other things. For sure, Maxine. I gotta say, as I keep saying here, right? What better way to hand free political bait to the Republicans? I mean, really, these people are making it so easy. And don't get me wrong, right? I think the Republican Party going into the midterms has serious weaknesses. I point out all the time that, hey, Trump is much more popular than the greater Republican Party. As you see it time and time again on off-year elections when Donald Trump is not on the ballot, people don't show up, right? Are just our own voters don't care enough and we are the low propensity voters, etc. I think largely there is some frustration because the House and Senate Republicans are kind of feckless, right? They fail to codify the Trump agenda, all that stuff. So don't, big, beautiful bill, they can't even get it passed without fighting amongst themselves. So there's a lot of vulnerabilities. But again, when you set up very easy political bait like that to say, okay, Republicans might be sucky at passing a budget or something, but the Democrats support rioting and violence, the decision becomes easy. And yes, I think fully it'd be a smart idea for Republicans. Take this bait. The Democrats are telling you, we want the 2026 midterms to be about immigration and the violent protests. Republicans, you ought to respond by saying, and so you do.
All of this is why the aliens won't talk to us. I see what you see, what the American people see. I mean, no disrespect to Congresswoman Waters, but somebody needs to tell her that the voices in her head are not real. Point two, I've listened to so many of my colleagues and members of the media say that these are mostly peaceful protests. That's like saying that Harvey Weinstein is mostly a feminist because he didn't every woman who came into his office. He only loved them. Number three, in terms of Governor Newsom, he's flip-flopped a lot, Sean, on issues, but the governor's been very consistent on one thing: his antipathy toward the lives and feelings of ordinary Americans, including public safety. Governor Newsom his record shows this. He's the dictionary definition of weenie. He thinks cops are a bigger problem than criminals. He thinks if a cop has to shoot a criminal, it's automatically and always a cop's fault, but if a criminal shoots a cop, it's automatically and always the gun's fault. Here's a tip: cops don't leave you alone unless you do illegal stuff. That's what we're seeing in California.
So yeah, my simple advice to Democrats is this: yes, please continue to hammer home the immigration issue, make the election all about immigration. I'm sure that's going to go so well for you. And to Gavin Newsom particularly, looking to 2028, really make sure you repeat to the American people in Iowa, in New Hampshire, and South Carolina that big, riveting message of perfect, brilliant. All right, with that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.